Breaking news! Final Fantasy VII's mobile gacha Ever Crisis is ending service later this year on October 6th, 2026. I feel like the only surprising element of this is that it's happening so soon. But while normally when a game goes offline, there's a lot of conversation about where the studio goes from here, I'm actually optimistic. So in today's video, I want to go over why that is, what went wrong with Ever Crisis, and where Square Enix hopefully goes from here. Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and let's mosey. So what is Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis? Well, at its core, it's a retelling of Final Fantasy VII, not just the original game, but the entire compilation, or at least it was supposed to be. You see, each individual entry of the compilation was supposed to be its own separate storyline in Ever Crisis that you could select and just play through. But the game itself, at its heart, was a gacha mobile game. It was available on Steam, though. You didn't really gacha for characters themselves, you gachaed for their weapons, and could also unlock outfits for the characters. And I feel in a lot of ways, Ever Crisis was doomed from the start, for two main reasons. One, as a gacha game, it's just not that good, or at least it doesn't give a strong first impression gameplay-wise. Of the admittedly few gacha games I've played from Square Enix, their gameplay is rather simplistic, and a lot of the times, they just give you so much player power initially that you can just auto-battle through pretty much everything. Not to mention, it's incredibly off-putting every time I try to start the game up, because for whatever reason, I feel motivated to experience the game, and I get multiple minutes of pop-ups and advertisements. For a game that's designed to be experienced in short bursts because of its chapter structure, those introductory pop-ups every time I want to boot the game up can feel like they're longer than actual chapters in-game. It's incredibly off-putting. Combined with gameplay that feels better designed to make me fall asleep, it's just not a good recipe. Now, I do think there are elements that Ever Crisis gets right. I think visually, it does feel like a kind of a modern take on the original graphic style of Final Fantasy VII. It's not one for one or anything like that, but I think there's some good charm to the art style, not only for the characters, but also for the world itself. I think alongside the artwork, with the camera, it does a good job retaining the presentation the original Final Fantasy VII had. It's just a shame that cannot be said about the gameplay itself or the actual pacing of the story. It's lightning quick, and they break up each microsection into its own chapter, so after every chapter, it throws you back to the menu to select the next one. But that little break in between each story chapter just ruins immersion and pacing. It makes the story feel segmented, like I'm watching, or yeah, I was gonna say playing, but it feels more like watching because of the gameplay, a SparkNotes version of Final Fantasy VII. How much did I just age myself with SparkNotes? They still around? And getting back on topic, just as an overall game experience, Ever Crisis does not provide a good first impression. And the other big crippling flaw about it is just the missed potential. Imagine if we had a true remake of the original Final Fantasy VII with additional story chapters, but with the presentation and gameplay of a regular video game, or just like the original Final Fantasy VII. One that had proper pacing, actually engaging gameplay, and world exploration. If you took the visual presentation of Ever Crisis and you just turned it into a regular video game, I think there would be a genuine audience for that. And this was something a lot of people, myself included, felt when they first announced Ever Crisis. There's a lot of controversy and conversation that surrounds Final Fantasy VII's remake series. I may love the remake games, but I would also love a traditional remake of the original Final Fantasy VII to go alongside those. Sure, you could argue it would be milking the audience, but if you provide me something that I enjoy, I don't mind being milked. Pause. I also think it'd be a good way to satiate each crowd. The crowd that wants a lot of changes and something that feels very different gets the remake series, and the crowd that wants something that feels far more like the original Final Fantasy VII would get what Ever Crisis should have been. And then you have people like me who would just consume both and be happy. But that's not what happened. They wanted to dip their toe further into the gacha pond, because it feels like Square Enix is so desperate to get some kind of mainstream gacha game, because they keep throwing them out the door and they keep failing one after the other. Now, I know this video has been rather negative up to this point, but funnily enough, this segues us nicely into why I'm so optimistic for the future of Final Fantasy VII and also Square Enix, because maybe we could get the game Ever Crisis should have been. Normally, when a game is taken offline, it's viewed to be a failure. However, I view this as opportunity. Less than a year ago, and then later on, Square Enix would announce and release Octopath Traveler 0. They took the Octopath Traveler mobile game and then just made it a regular RPG. However, that wouldn't be the final one. They would then go on to announce Final Fantasy Resonance, a very similar concept to Octopath Traveler 0. You take a mobile gacha game, like Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and then you just make it a proper game. game. I am looking forward to this game so dang much. It looks so cool, and in a lot of ways feels like a return to the old formula of Final Fantasy with the HD 2D art style, which I really love. I'm looking forward to this game so dang much because I played a little bit of Brave Exvius, and it's a similar story to me to Ever Crisis. I like the presentation, I like the world, I like the story that is going on, but by nature of it being a Square Enix mobile gacha game, it has factors and elements that I find wholly off-putting and that will sour the overall experience. When you're taking games like that and then converting them into things like this, it keeps the stuff I like, in fact possibly bolsters it, and then gives me even more elements of things that I like and appreciate while removing the elements that I don't like. Now, there's no confirmation or anything that I've seen that they're going to do the same with Ever Crisis at some point, but I hope they do. Can you imagine how cool and fun a more traditional remake of the original Final Fantasy VII? Just how cool that could be? Whether or not it's HD 2D or you just take the art style and the character models from Ever Crisis and then just make a traditional Final Fantasy VII remake from that. Either style I would be highly receptive to. I really do feel like this could be one of those situations where one door closes and not even a window opens up, but an entire gate, like you're walking into Babylon. There is so much good potential here for Square Enix to pivot away from this design trend of trying to turn every main series they have into some kind of mobile gacha game. And then in the case of Ever Crisis, shoving in very important lore for the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. Instead of doing that, we can get actually cool things like Final Fantasy Resonance and Octopath Traveler 0. I am someone who still loves modern Final Fantasy. I have my issues with it, but overall I still love and adore it. This one shot from Final Fantasy Resonance is cooler to me than most of what I've seen out of the franchise in quite some time. One of the things I really appreciate about modern Square Enix is they are willing to do these smaller scale projects. Not everything has to be some AAA, we have to squeeze every pixel out of this masterpiece or whatever. We can have these games be scaled, budgeted accordingly, and allow these games to shine due to their own unique nature, while also retaining some kind of identity. It's like, I love the HD 2D art style, and I'm not saying a Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis real game remake has to be HD 2D or anything like that. You don't have to do that, as Final Fantasy Tactics showcased. It's just one tool in a potential tool belt that they could utilize and leverage to give us the Final Fantasy VII remake a lot of us have been wanting to see for so long at this point. And I think a Final Fantasy VII remake in that style can truly coexist with the remake trilogy. Sure, we can argue and debate all day until the cows come home what they should have done all those years ago. But right here, right now, and in this moment, I think doing something along these lines would be the best possible outcome. Will it happen immediately? I can't imagine it's going to, but even if it's down the line, if we do end up getting something like that, I'd be in favor of it. I'd be ecstatic, especially if it's structured like Ever Crisis was, where you have a traditional remake of the main campaign of Final Fantasy VII, side content and all, but then you give us additional story that you can probably access in like a separate menu or something for things like First Soldier, or maybe even like Crisis Core. Sure, we already have a Crisis Core remaster, so it's not like a high priority or anything like that, but as additional value in something for like a Final Fantasy VII Resident style remake of Final Fantasy VII, that could be really cool. And to me, if we have to sacrifice Ever Crisis to get to this possible future, I would make that trade every day of the week. And here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with what you want to see out of the future for Final Fantasy VII. Do you want to see a remake or just for them to move on to something different? Would you like the remake to be HD 2D, like Tactics, or even just like Ever Crisis, but, you know, an actual game? I would love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And PlayStation's getting a ton of pushback because of their move away from physical gaming. What's going on? Will it amount to anything? Questions abound, and we may have some answers. You're gonna want to check out this video right here for more. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!